is our final. Hello, everyone. How was the year? So, we have everybody attention, yes. Just, seeing the been here is not being so both with the dance and the video here as the photographer. And we have a little present for you. Sing. We will probably all see a movie of these producers on RPPF and shot so much footage.
Yes.
It'd be incredible.
Great. Thank you so much.
Next year, we're going to be doing the same thing. It would be really interesting if somebody showed up with me announce the birthday on the same day. Okay, so this is our last Q&A. We can start as we did last time. Does anybody have a question you want to start with? Otherwise, I will start. Okay, here's the question. I'm going to ask you that you can start. I mean, the question is, and this is the sub-theme of this is how you guys can really tap into your own creativity so that when you play the piano, it really comes from your heart and it sounds different than everybody else on the planet. But that your individuality really shines through and the fire within you really burns bright. So the question is, how do you contact that place when you practice at home? That's the first place of practice. So how do you access that when you're working on a piece?
Yeah, I want to add one thing before I answer that it's essential to do that. Because what do you have, really, that somebody else doesn't have? I mean, how many pianists are out there that can do so much and can play all the transcendental ages perfectly and this kind of thing? And it's kind of discouraging, right? Especially these days. But you do have something that nobody else has, and that's your own musical soul. And so if you can express that in a way that actually comes across, people are going to be interested in you, and that's your chance. And so you have to do this. And so at home, actually I practice at school, but anyway.
School.
And it's the actual music. I mean, it's the repertoire that I love, and we're incredibly lucky to have this. I mean, I feel that like the entire human civilization, and this is not really politically correct to say, because these days we're supposed to say that everything is equal. All different cultures are equal at all different times. I think it's obviously not true, because just take one culture in itself. There are rises and falls within that culture. Like at a certain time in music history, the greatest composers all lived at the same time and they were writing this great music. Or say painting in the Dutch golden age when Rembrandt was painting. I mean, it wasn't only him. Other people painted it. It's impossible to tell the difference between his paintings and theirs. So the high points like that. And one of the high points in our entire human history is our piano music. I mean, all of music in general, but piano music has so much treasure, and we're still discovering new things. But even the ones that we all know and we play, so you fall in love with a piece or with the idea of a piece. You don't just practice it and read the notes. You do that, but you also think about it and what's behind it and what other things can kind of feed into it other things from our culture, other things from the style. And I just find that endlessly fascinating. And there's so many opportunities to find information about things. Supposing you work on some piece, first of all, there's all recorded history. It's on YouTube, so you can listen to other people playing it. Or you can go on, I love Perplexity, by the way. Perplexity is like another chat GPT. And any information that you want about anything, you can instantly dial it up and find out and explore more. And so it gives me things to think about. So it's not just the practicing the notes and making a nice phrase, but it gives something behind the music. And if you can connect with the particular piece like that, then you have this bond. It's like a frame between you and the piece, and it develops into something special. And that's your personality. It's not like you putting your personality on the piece, but it's the connection between you and that piece that grows into something special. And when you play it, you feel it happen. If you can get into the zone of just being the playing that you're doing at that moment, it's such a special moment. And that's how your self can come into existence of music.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I could totally agree with Professor Greene on everything he said. I have to add perplexity. Yes, it's great. Don't trust completely all what perplexity says. So be always very, intelligent to find out if a person's perplexity is wrong with my birthday. Yeah, I think because he got it or she got it or they got it from Wikipedia and it's wrong. So what I'm saying is that you have to be always very critic in what you find on the internet. And the beauty of this is that internet has many, offers you many tools to find things that you want. I would like to tell you a little gossip that after, I was at Library pre-screening jury a few months ago. Speaking of what an individual can find in the music and how we can make this music personal or not. There was one of the competitors of the 77 who came from the screen to the library. He played, I will not tell you which piece because maybe you can recognize his student and I don't want to be very precise, but he played a major piece of the piano literature and he wanted to be very personal. Different from the others. And you know what he did? He started adding octaves the whole time to the music. So he was playing music by an incredible composer which we adore, but he thought that the music which was printed by this composer was not enough for what he had in mind. So he started to add octaves here and there. And it was from the start to the end, he added like an extra 100 notes. And do you want to know our reaction at the jury? We were shocked and so furious and angry. So I'm telling you this story because what Professor Greene is saying is that we have to find ourselves in music, but that doesn't mean that we have to change music. Music is what we were left from these geniuses who knew the piano already. Whichever piano they had under the fingers, they knew what they wanted to create. So if we change things that are written in the score, in my opinion, and I shared this opinion with my colleagues in the jury, this was actually a very bad thing from that competitor who didn't let this decision that he made was not, in our opinion, the right decision to make. Instead of finding his personality through the notes, he wanted to compose another piece, basically.
Can I argue with you?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know about, I didn't hear that competitor, and I'm sure that it was in bad taste, and I would have agreed with you on that. But I think it's dangerous to put on a pedestal the exact thing that the composer wanted, because we don't really know. I mean, if you say Rachmaninoff wrote a crescendo in the second theme of the second concerto to the top note, and he played a diminuendo.
Yeah.
And so the expression of music is from the subconscious. And even if the composer says, like Charles Ives would say something about his music is supposed to be like a real man, but actually he was expressing a lot more than that. So we don't want to restrictions, and actually I changed some things in the pieces that I play. Yeah.
Yeah, but what Professor Greene is doing, I guess it's not 100
No, right.
score. So that's where you want to go with your new ideas. In my opinion, all these hairpins, for instance, the hairpins, they don't use mean crescendo or diminuendo. You know this. Hairpins are completely different. So if a hairpin is going up and you decide to do diminuendo, it's absolutely fine with you, and it's even more interesting. But I think there's so many things without thinking that they're gods, those musicians, but they are, our daily bread. I think when I go back to a score, even without changing things or adding notes, I find things that I didn't find 10 years ago, just by looking at a score.
Yeah, I feel
that's a challenge.
the easiest thing to fall into the trap is to be afraid to do things and to think, I have to find out how this is supposed to go, or what I have to do, or a style, you have to match the Mozart style by doing all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. I think that's a dangerous thing that prevents our actual self from coming out. I mean, there is such a thing as style, but it's not rules. It's being comfortable with the whole culture that the music came from.
There's something like, that's what a teacher is really for, a guide, a mentor, because it's hard to know when I was like in my 20s, I really didn't know what was too far or what was not far enough or maybe too certain. So if you have a good mentor, you get some feedback, but don't do that. That's in bad taste for this period. But also, like if you want to add some notes or change some, there is some leeway there. I wouldn't say 100 or 200 or 10 or whatever. It depends on the taste. And I'm sure, but then you can cross over and if you shouldn't have a transcription or an arrangement.
Right.
So there are these, there's a lot of flexibility.
I have a little something to add to this, adding octaves. So I was probably close to your age, and I was very lucky to be able to play for Christian Zimmerman, who was one of my idols, right? And I was so naive and so stupidly courageous to play the Chopin's Fourth Ballade, okay? Yes. And in one of the places, I decided to add an extra octave for effect. I just wanted the climax to be more dramatic. And he started smiling. And he said, I understand what kind of tradition you're trying to pay tribute to. Sometimes students of Liszt were famous for adding an extra octave, and it didn't seem to be a terrible thing. But then he said, he looked at me with those very laser focused eyes. But he says, are you doing that because you really must, or because you don't like the sound that you made with a single note?
That's nice.
Good.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh. So before I change something, my philosophy is to think, do I have a valid musical reason for it? Yeah. Or because it's wonderful to have instincts. If we didn't have instincts, I don't think we could make music. But just because we have instincts doesn't mean that our instincts are invalid. So then I would say, use caution.
Yeah. The same things with tricks. Same thing, when you change the distribution, when you do a redistribution. I had a teacher who decided that Rao would kill this teacher. This is when he was young. If you would redistribute things, because he would say, Rao would say, if you're doing this, first of all, you don't think that this composer felt that it was possible to do it, and then you're changing the musical aspect of it, because it's becoming easier like that, and so you're losing the musical difficulty of the passage.
Wow.
So be conscious, like for some instance.
I think it's a question of emphasis. I mean, yeah, if you add an octave in most, I can't imagine a place in the ballades where it would actually work to add an octave.
I was wild.
Yeah. But still, I mean, we started this conversation about how to draw out your real self and connect with the music, and instantly conversation becomes something about what you can't do. And it's so often that happens, and in the educational system that we have, and I think that we have to try. It's a question of balance. I mean, of course, you can't do this, you can't do that, but the most thing you should be encouraged to do is to try everything.
Yeah.
And when you're in a practice room, you can do anything. You can add 1,000,000 octaves in.
I could do it mine with Arthur. And, I was just thinking of all the Wortley's recordings of this and that. I mean, like, students would walk in and say, well, I took your advice and I listened to blah, 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 my poets, and I didn't even recognize them. So is that too much? That's who was what?
Well, there was slash orbits. So he created a new version, like an arrangement.
Well, I'm talking about what was supposed to be just the slow.
You always change that.
Valley Development.
Right.
Things that, just they're out there.
Yeah.
But I thought that was, wow, let's go exploring. That doesn't mean I have to do it or anybody here has to do it. But, you have to, a lot of people think it's bad taste, but, it's all subjective.
Right.
And it's one thing if your focus is, in a way, every set of jurors anyway for a competition is different. And not the vote that you're just saying, could have gone another way with another group of people.
Yeah.
I don't know. But however, the most important thing is to be yourself.
Yeah.
And yes, you have to trust, if you have a teacher, your teacher that has a guide. And I think it's also, I'm surprised at how many of you don't record yourself with your fancy iPhones and a really good mic, like a Shure mic, and play it back for yourself because you have taste. And you might say, oh my God, what is this? Yeah, you might say, wow, I love this.
Yeah.
But you have to listen to yourself with some perspective.
Yeah. I want to also add something in kind of a different direction. I think one of the ways that I have been able to find my own voice, and I'm in agreement that I think that the balance of channeling what the composer intended and our own voice, to me, is an amazing, really fun challenge. But I feel I've developed how to make the piano talk the most effectively by playing with other musicians, and particularly singers. I played with tons of singers my whole life. And I think there's something just so intrinsic about the human voice that even an untrained singer knows sort of how to sing legato because just of the bodily constraints and what they have to do with their body to make that happen. You learn how to play a legato phrase and then play with any other instrument really, which all of the other instruments are sustaining instruments basically, and we are not. So to figure out how to make this box speak in the most sincere way, I think that the more you can play with other people and absorb how they make phrases speak, and when you hear something that really talks to you from somebody else, it cuts right to the soul. So
I guess the life hour is, when you start, you should try and listen to your inner voice or your heart and want to experiment. I don't think it first is possible to know whether it's good or bad, because you have to go a little bit down the road and experiment once, and then maybe the next day come and experiment, do a similar experiment. That means just start with whatever you thought was the most interesting part of your practice and see where that goes. And pretty soon there'll be things that you keep and things that you reject. And it's not like blind emotion is repetition, because it's always a little bit different. And we always are a little bit different.
It's not like a multiple choice test, correct? It's a development. It takes time.
Because depending on, if you practice, whether you practice on the same piano and the same or different pianos, even when I practice on my piano does not sound exactly the same every day. And I don't feel the same every day. And that's important because I think if the piano is a living thing, the piano is my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I can say the most to it, and it says a lot to me.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's an advantage that you're living in a time when you have absolute ready access to so many recordings, right? But it's also a disadvantage in a way, because we're sort of hearing these pre-conscribed interpretations of something. And I think most importantly is, of course, use those resources. But I think it's so important to continually unplug, to actually honor silence, honor time to yourself in nature, but importantly, just sit with your score and imagine, without hearing anything, bring to life the score out of silence. And I think that's a real kind of filtration of developing where that's coming through, finding your voice that way. I had the pleasure of working with Mitsuko Chida years ago, and I was living in London. And for every hour that she spent at the keyboard, she had her futon right there close to her in the room. She would spend the next hour just in silence studying the score. Then whenever she was exploring, she would take back to the keyboard, and it was like playing around with those ideas. Hours up, she'd go back to her futon religiously. And you hear that in her playing. It is speech-like. There is this communication that goes beyond tradition in a way. So I think that's so important, honoring time to yourself, unplugging, maybe taking. It's so hard for all of us, just as much. But taking that time sort of religiously, is there a half day a week that you can say, this is going to be my time? Or maybe it's more often than that, ideally. But honoring the silence, honoring your own persona, and trusting and aligning with your own highest objectives.
Yeah, I still think your own voice versus composer's voice. I have a project with my colleague, Allison, that she was writing a creature journey that I supposed to premiere. And at the end of the day, the project was that I interfere her creation, that she wanted to adapt with performance aspect to like Fender's suited piano concerto for short pianists. So it was more than half composed that as okay, this not pianistic also I was changing this and suggesting. And she was open. That was a project. She was open to actually to painting. Yes, yeah. So when I think it's like for me, every day is changing. Yeah, maybe this. So I have these classical sources in my mind. So I didn't really get out of it. And she was different. Her background was different. So there is change. But the dream was like about at the end of the week, I retreat. I retreat almost everything I suggested. It didn't work. Because she had her own voice in the competition, and you cannot make patchwork. It didn't. This kind of a clumsy one, out of our experience, it was the interesting. So that was the occasion for me to honor more composers' stories. I cannot feel comfortable with their both us, even though it will be one feel that the younger composer less experience. There is a concept the composer has, and even though it feels that okay, the octave more could be better, we can try it. But in my experience, at the end, I succumbed to the composer.
I think I agree with a lot of what is being said here, but going back to the first question, which is how do we find? Because how do you find the voice of the composer would be another topic, which I think is equally important. But I think thinking about this, to me, it's about motivation. What motivation do I have to play the piano? But why do I play? But why do I make music? Why do I play this particular piece? And when I'm answering these questions, then there is some sort of connection with the piece that should be at least primarily at some instinctuals. When I play something, why am I playing this novelle by Schumann and not this other? There is something about this one that seems to call to me. So I think it's very important to, it's like, if we're gonna find our own voice, we're not gonna find it somewhere outside us. I think that is the work that we have to do with our own soul, with our own mind, trying to find out who we really are and why we do the things that we do. Because only then we're going to have a reaction to that piece of music that is in there. And that reaction, because of the virtue that we are a different human being, is already going to be okay. You don't have to superimpose something or try to be original. No, you're always original because you're human. There is only one of you. However, do you know yourself? Have you developed your internal work? Do you know how you feel? Do you know that the things that really affect you? Do you know your own heart? And then when you read a piece of music for the first time, or you hear it and then you want to play it, can you somehow imagine what the composer was feeling? Can you feel like somehow you're talking through centuries and different dimensions, and you can feel close to Beethoven because, yeah, I can't understand what he was going through or what he's trying to say with this. If you don't have that instinctual, it's almost like falling in love. If you don't have that kind of, then it's very difficult to find any voice, because then I feel that everything that we can add, whether it's one way or another, is like putting little makeup and then pretending that that's something original. And at worst, it can become very eccentric and distorted, and you might end up making a caricature of the music. But you can never, no matter how original you are, you can never make a caricature of the music if you are truly honest to your own heart and to what you think the composer is trying to say. So that's where I think, yes, we have the tool of the music, the text. It is what we have. Unfortunately, we cannot call Ludwig and say, hey, what do you mean, bro? We have the text, and that's why the text is so important, but we are all going to interpret the text in different ways. Mm-hmm. I think that's okay. That's wonderful, actually. But we are going to have a different heart, soul connection to that piece of music.
So following up on what you say, so do you think, I think, just well enough you agree. So there's certain pieces, especially when I was much, much younger, and really, like, I went through this huge Rachmaninoff period, and just like, and scale, and, just like the pieces would just pull me in. So the voice of the composer was just like that. But it was through the voice of the composer like that I began to feel my own voice more. But sometimes it's the other way around. I can feel my own voice, and I can also reach out to the composer and let that, there are the pieces that I haven't been bitten by in love right away, but have grown on me. So it can go either way. And very often it's not
Yes.
one or the other. So, but when you were talking, I was thinking that I think all of you need to experience this back and forth with different music, because that's how it is.
Following up in this, for instance, late Beethoven sonatas, every time that he's tender, many of my students don't know that, for instance, he was fighting to get custody over his nephew. And you can associate the tenderness with the need of, finding a human relationship that in his life didn't work. And the nephew, there were so many problems. So you can see this reflected in the music. Those were human people. And what they're trying to say is that you can actually find connection with what they thought, not really what they wrote. That's what not what I meant to you, for what they wrote is a result of what they thought. And also following up on the repertoire, what speaks to you. So, for instance, my experience here in America, teaching you don't know how many 31-3 I heard. It's like Beethoven wrote only 31-3. What happens to 31-1? Is anybody playing 31-1? What's the problem with 31-1? What about Opus 28? It doesn't work in competitions? Where's the repertoire? Even those giants. I kind of hate that 31-3. There's so much repertoire out there that we don't play. What about Medley, for instance? Everybody plays Rachmaninoff, which is absolutely fine. Where is Magner? So from tons of music, and so many other composers that we don't respect enough only because our classmates don't play them in competitions, which is not why we are musicians. So the way of exploring yourself goes also through the choice of repertoire. And don't wait for the teacher. I have a student now coming to me from St. Petersburg, and she asked me in the summer, what should I study? And I answered back, yeah, I have a few, advices, but what would you like to do? And she answered, I don't know what to say, because until now, I was not allowed to choose.
Yeah.
I was playing the pieces chosen by my teacher at 18. This is, in my opinion, is great sex. Because you must have a voice in finding your repertoire and the things that speak to you. And luckily enough, we don't have the repertoire of viola. All due respect to violists. Yeah,
That's about 5. Hey,
Questions from the audience? Anyone in you? No hand or a hand?
all it takes is one get.
For a second. I'm curious about, could you all describe like the best performances of your life so far? And what I'm more curious about is why you think it was great, like external factors and also internal factors that contributed to you thinking that you felt that it was a successful or best performance. And I'm very curious about the mindset of.
First of all, I mean, I would answer by, I think the recording technology has made me realize this. Sometimes when I feel like I played, well, first of all, my best, I mean, that's like a big area of my best. Just whenever you feel like you played well, that's immediately, oh yeah, I could have done this, and your goals and, go up. But sometimes when I felt like, gee, that was like, and I hear the recording, I'm very impressed. And that turns out the recording seems to be much better than my memory. So it's very hard to be subject and object at the same time. So it's not accurate all the time. But I mean, one thing that's very important for me, like, you were talking about playing the Liszt Sonata. Perhaps Mendez say about that. It's, that piece, there's certain pieces that are always a trip. Like Raphael seconds to Myer. They're just like, I don't even know, it's like you're a changed person at the end of some of these pieces.
111, it's like.
Yeah, 111 was like that. I mean, there's just no way. And you don't change back to the way you were before. It's just like you're on this journey. But there are other pieces that are simply just really delightful to play. And they're just, just enjoy performing them. Because you enjoy it and the audience enjoys it. So it's not so, it's not like the cookie down your asses.
Yeah. For me, it was a performance where many different things kind of came together. I grew up in Cleveland, and I grew up watching the Cleveland competition many different times every 2 years. Always wanted to do it. And so I got it in 2001 when somebody else was the winner. I didn't pass the first round, but I went to Cleveland. I played in the competition, had a great time. 2003, my tape was not accepted.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. 2005, I got in. And by this time, they were using the Cleveland Orchestra for the finals. And I had grown up with the Cleveland Orchestra. It was my lifelong dream to play with the Cleveland Orchestra. So I got to the finals. And I had chosen, not because I thought it was maybe the best competition piece, but I chose Beethoven Fourth because it's really my favorite concerto. If by then it was one of my most comfortable concertos. But more so because I knew if I got to the finals, I would be playing this piece with the Cleveland Orchestra. And really, I knew their playing. I knew they were so suited to this piece, their sound, their liquid sound. So I got to the finals, and one would assume that I would be terribly nervous, but I thought, I'm about to play Beethoven Fourth with the Cleveland Orchestra. This is my absolute lifelong dream come true. I cannot be nervous. I have to let all this go and just go out and play. So that was, I think, it's still the highlight of my life. So, yeah, dream come true. Yeah, and I didn't win. I got fourth prize. I got last place. But this is my lifelong dream come true.
You have another dream now? Did you make a new dream? What are you making?
I would love to go back and play with them. Yeah. But yeah, no dream. Yeah.
That story. Anyone else?
I don't know if I pinpoint an exact performance, but performances always can cause distraction, right? We can play all we want, a little bit alone practicing and so forth. But I think the students ask this a lot. How do I get over the difference it feels when someone comes into my energy from the distraction? So I'd say the most satisfying performances is when the performance is void of that you're able to stay connected with your pipeline, your storyline, your connection to the piece, without any of the ghosts. And, I think we all, our whole lives, kind of struggles with that. But I think those are the most meaningful performances when you've been able to kind of communicate from A to Z and feel that there was nothing that got in the way of that you crossed over the threshold, and hopefully the listener was able to be with you through the whole journey.
Yeah. For me, well, first of all, going back to what Spencer said, this shows you how competitions can be helpful, but also they don't mean so much, because Professor Myer is one of the most accomplished pianists and teachers in the United States, and yet he didn't go through in 201. That doesn't mean anything. In at that particular time was a strength field. The jury felt somehow differently. There were other people like Min Song, who was an incredible pianist, teacher of Yogosha. It was an incredible group, and of course he found his way. For me, probably the competition, the performance that I remember the most was 118 at the Kleinburg, which I didn't win. But somehow I remember I felt like I was not in competition. By that time, I probably learned that you do those things not because you want to win, but because you want to be presented somehow to the music world and get the possibility to speak with your own voice. And I played 118 like I was not in the competition. 118 is not actually a competition piece. If you think about 23 minutes out of 45 in the quarterfinals at the library is not probably what I would advise my students to do. But at that time, I decided that that's what I wanted to do. And especially number 2, which I believe you can see on YouTube, is just, I think, very honest. That's what they said. That they're saying, if you find a honest way to speak, it's a communication, it's a language, so people would appreciate that. So probably that was the moment that I remember the most.
Yeah, I think I don't like my performances. Right, they're good. But one has to learn from that, and one has to. So I would never say, okay, that was my greatest, because that usually doesn't happen to me. However, I think if I can think of a performance, it was just a regular recital in the middle of nowhere in Spain, and there was a certain energy that I could just feel. There was a certain special kind of silence from the audience. And then at the end of the recital, which I didn't think it had gone particularly well, But at the end of the recital, somebody came up to me and, they were walking. And they thought that was a very unique experience for them in their lives. So then when I saw that effect, I thought, no matter how I feel, this is what it's all about. So that's,
I agree with Jose about my performances, but and I don't know if this was the best performance I ever did. It wasn't that long ago. I was playing Liszt Benediction of Solitude, which actually I didn't play out of my soiree. And I was practicing it, but there are a lot of issues to practice, and I never actually was playing through the whole piece when I was practicing. And so I don't know if it was the first time I played through it, but anyway, it was at this concert, and I was playing it and really enjoying the feeling and the sound and the scope of this piece. And I got to the end, the last page. I don't know if you know this piece. It's an amazing piece. There's one little section that's completely different from everything else. It's like a little Schubert or Schumann solo. And it just seemed so perfect to me. And I understood for the first time why it was there. And I actually started crying while I was playing. So that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, I think I agree with everybody. I don't know how you guys feel, but like if you're making a recording, you have to sign off on it and you have to listen to it at least once, maybe twice. But after that, I can't stand to do that. I cannot stare and listen to myself. It's not like I'm allergic, but I'm not there anymore. That's just like, that catches the static moments. The Lolita, I could be way down the road. I would never phrase like that. Like, what? Why would I do that? It's like, can't happen again. So that's the trouble. Whether it's babies changing all the time.
But best performances are in the future.
Yeah, that's the Another question? You just need one hand. Yeah.
I want to ask, I know, though you're not a professor, but you guys were all students before. So did you have bad memories with your professors before? Like you're getting screened by your professor or something?
Yeah, what? By your professor?
By the professor you studied before.
What kind of memories did you say?
Yeah, you said getting something.
Getting screamed at. I did. With Pashkir.
Sometimes the look is worse than the screams.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's why it's nice for you to have such an opportunity to work with so many teachers. You will like all the positive aspects that we give you, and you will hate the negative aspects of all of us if we have. So that you won't have those negative aspects in your teaching. For instance, in my case, I had this one lesson with all due respect, with this professor who is now not anymore with us. And he was screaming to the point that I felt that he liked screaming and be offensive. To the point like, you cannot be a musician, you should do something else, and so on and so on. So you understand that there may be something going wrong with their life at that young age. And we're human beings. We're human beings, and he was basically all the time like this. There's famous video, by the way, if you want to see it. False one. Because he's so excited. What that? But with all due respect, I understood what he wanted to mean somehow, but I understood also that it was mixed with something else, which I wasn't interested in. And the nice thing is that you have a choice. You can have choices and work with the people that you want to work with, and you're not stuck. And in any case, you cannot be treated in a bad way by anybody. Remember this. If someone is treating you badly, it's because they're using their authority over you, and this is totally wrong. So you have your own voice. And because
there's kind of a tradition in piano teaching of being nasty like that. I remember I had a friend at Juilliard, and she studied with Adele Marcus, who's famous for that kind of thing. And she showed me her score, a Rachmaninoff Corelli variations, and to talk about something in the score on the first page, and across it was written in pen, "Sounds awful." And she didn't even notice that because she always saw that while she's practicing all the time. She would see, "Sounds awful." I said, "Who wrote this accent?" This Marcus from us.
In all fairness, I think that, like the style or the album style in literature, really, I'm used to those two. I don't think that's with the trend now. I think in general, that's been weeded out. And we don't, as a society, tolerate it.
We might get too much the other way around.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a different thing. But still, you have the right, even if somebody's perfectly nice and you feel well, you can have a really important lesson from somebody and still not want to do what that teacher is telling you. So the rolling refusal. I mean,
Yep.
that's fine. Just take what you think is good for you and leave the rest by deciding you vote for here.
Yep.
There's also no saying what someone thinks of you is none of your business. So, I think one is in the case where you feel that I think you can't take that with you. I think you have to kind of separate and realize that is that entity and I myself. And, I think you have to kind of filter through your own mind, what is it that they are trying to say?
Yep.
And then keep the positive, keep the constructive, I should say. I don't think, personally, I think already becoming a musician and it already has so many of its own challenges and personal strives and all of that. But I think the goal of a teacher is to kind of try to uplift rather than to cause this kind of thing.
I have something to add similar to what Roberto went through. In my last year of high school, also going back to the Cleveland competition, I watched the entire 1995 Cleveland competition. And pretty much all of the winners were Sergei Babayan's students. And I was kind of I was actually past the point where I really needed to switch teachers. My teacher and I had become too good of friends, and I had outgrown her and whatnot. So I was looking into switching teachers, and I said, if there's anybody I'm going to go to, it has to be Babayan. So I had a couple of lessons with him, and I later found out that he was in a kind of a rough point in his life and whatnot. But it was the type of teaching, I know he's a brilliant teacher, and I would imagine he's in a better point in his life, and he's different now. But it was the kind of teaching where we spent the lesson on 2 measures, and absolutely nothing I did was right. And I just never felt that I could do anything right. Nothing was right. Everything's wrong. And I think... and I have the utmost respect for him now, and I hope I can see him now and interact with him as a person and get to know him. It makes amazing respect. But I think it brings up a point that I feel very strongly about, that I think even you, in your own practice, as much as we try to always improve and scrutinize ourselves, I think it's very important that you guys have at least something in your playing, even if it's an aspect of your playing that you want to improve, that you like, that brings you pleasure, or something from the instrument that brings you pleasure. If every moment of your practice is you hating yourself, and again, that's different from being scrutinizing of yourself and demanding of yourself, then it's not productive. Yeah.
Sergei, once he told me a story going back to Babayan. He was studying with Naumov, Lev Naumov, and I guess Naumov had the same style of what Sergei has. And he told me the story of Naumov telling him while he was practicing Scargol that his Scargol was completely useless and no imagination at all. I mean, you know Babayan, right? But imagination like crazy. And Naumov was telling him he's playing no imagination at all. It was completely dull and everything. And he told me what Naumov told him to think about. I don't know if this is appropriate or not. I think I can say it. He told him to imagine putting his hands in the inside of the dead body while he was playing Scargol. It's a lot. But Sergey told me that he changed completely his perspective on Skarpov. The very time that he started playing Skarpov, he was terrified.
Wow.
I think, just to add my little 2 cents, I think we were all students at one point in time. I was never abused by my teachers, even though I had teachers like Byron and Johnny's that had the reputation of being very, very, I mean, some students were literally thrown out of the apartment, physically thrown out as well. But me personally, I never had to deal with any of that. But there is one thing that is important. We should never allow or condone that kind of teaching. Not only is it's almost borderline a crime to do something like that, but it's basically not very productive.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all humans, and we go through stuff in our own lives, and sometimes we're tired. We've been too many students, and we've been repeating the same concept for the last 25 students, and then the 26th student now is saying that's exactly the same thing. And so there are moments where one can be a little bit short-tempered or something like that. But whatever it is that we say, it's important to always, for me, to remember that it's about producing a result. It's not personal. It's not about, if I say what you're playing, it's faulty because of this and this, it's not you that is faulty. It's your playing of this particular piece at this particular moment. And it's business. It's not personal. So taking that personal element out of it, then you realize that what we really should be doing is talking about the music, not talking about, oh, you should feel terrible. Because I am sure that when people play for me, they all are trying to be playing their best. I don't think any student comes to me and so I'm gonna play really bad for Roberto. I just want to offend them. So I'm aware that the student is nervous, that the student may have not worked out, and that the student might be having some kind of struggle with the piece, because I was a student, so I know all those things. And so my mission, even though sometimes I may come across a little bit serious and intimidating, but my mission is to try to help as much as possible. And the way I see myself is not that much different from a student, because at the end of the day, we're all in the same road. We're all in this journey about trying to play music to the best of our ability, trying to communicate with other human beings. And no matter how further along I am in that road, because I have more experience and I'm older, I still have infinite ahead of me. So someone behind me also has infinite behind me, or ahead of me. So it doesn't really matter. The only thing that I act as is as someone who points possibilities, points the way, and tries to solve the struggles that my experience can be helpful. But if I ever find myself being overly sensitive with somebody's playing, I immediately try to remind myself that this is not about me, this is not about it, this is about the music. So I think that's what helped me. So if any of you are dealing with something like that, remember this is about the music. Don't accept the abuse. You have choices. Go to somebody because you need to trust your teacher. Yeah. It's a relationship, trust. And then if you find yourself teaching and you have some bad experience, do not repeat. Do not teach as you were taught if that was not good. Change the dynamic, break the cycle.
Yeah, and it's also our personal opinions, what we tell you. and we know it's audience bristle. They told me to tell us what to do. So you go to the next teacher and he or she may be telling you the opposite of you just heard. And this is the beauty of this festival, but you hear so many different voices, and none of us has the 100% right to tell you that what we say is right. I know teachers who usually do this, but how can they know?
Also, I'd like to add that it's difficult being a teacher because I want people to feel good. I hate to say something that makes somebody feel bad about themselves, but they're going to go and play for an audition or an concert or something like that. And what am I supposed to do? Just tell them, oh, it sounds really great. And then you're going to go out and be shocked that nobody likes it. So I have to find a way somehow to still be nice to them, but, fix these problems. And being a student, there's a responsibility for the students too, to not be too sensitive about being criticized, because actually, don't forget, why did you come to the teacher is to find out, what you can improve. That means that these things are not just the way you want. So it's a two-way street with that, and we just have to all do best.
Yeah.
I think we got to stop here since sorry, they enjoy when you do this warrior. But thank you all, and see you.
We have so much to be grateful for Rebecca. She's tireless about this festival, her vision, her love, what she gives up for this. So Rebecca, thank you for all.